Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you with my co-host, David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you for being here with me tonight.
And thank you, as always, Robert. And happy Tuesday, everybody. This is our 142nd show. And we always greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite creator. And thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody's birthday today. I think it's F. Kitty's, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday to you. Yay! Anyway, Chloe's in the house. Scotty Boy and Elderberry. And Regine Hutchelson, thank you for being here. I hope this Labor Day. Yes. I hope you all had a good Labor Day weekend. That one extra day makes a difference when you don't have to go to work, unless you're like me and had to go to work. F. Kitty says, why is your tagline be the change you want to see? And said, no, my change isn't because Rex Bear uses be the change you want to see. I use the change, be the frequency you want to receive. See? Otherwise, you might as well just go over to Leap Project and listen to him. Not that Rex Bear ain't a good guy. I like him. I listen to his shows all the time. But anyway, thank you. Lucky Stone is in the house. Happy Tribe Tuesday. Taco Tuesday. And there's Scotty Boy. Scotty Boy's in the house. And everybody, okay. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Susie Q. Susie Q is in the house. Hello, you people. Thank you for coming again. Anyway, it is a great Tuesday. Oh, gee, I can't hit these people are chiming in so fast. Anyway, we got a good show for you. I'm going to be talking about the Florida Indians. Have you been to Florida? You know what it's like down there? Well, it wasn't like that 1,000 years ago. It was inhabited by multiple tribes of Indians. And there's Richard, the Red. Thank you for being here. Good evening, Robert and Hawkeye, all in chat. Thank you for coming and joining us. Anyway, the point is that the Indians from back in the day before the Spanish and Columbus had landed on the Americas and said that they discovered something new. There was tribes of Indians here with cultures way beyond the vast imagination of any white settler from the European continent. They came here finding vast tribes of Indians who were very warlike. They were tough as nails, and they lived off the ocean seas, and they fished and did not so much farming, but fished and scavenged around, mostly living off of shellfish and their fishing habits. Of course, they were along the coast, so what do you expect? I got some stuff here to show you because, of course, how disappointing would I be if I didn't have a map? Of course, I got a map. And as soon as I get this all done. But the natives did inhabit.
Let me add a few things while you're looking there for a second. Okay. For those folks who have never been to Florida, the middle of Florida, right down the spine of Florida, is the highest point in Florida. Everything else is at sea level. Southern Florida is nothing but the Everglades. And, you go down around Lake Okeechobee and you look in the ditches and there's water in the ditches. That's because that's where sea level is. And so a lot of Florida is still, swampland. And so anybody who lived there back in the day had to be tough as nails. And that's my 10 cents on that.
Yeah.
You got to be tough as nails now to live down there if you were to live out in the swamps or whatever. But back in them days, it was really tough.
Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely so. See, and then the thing is back then, I went quite a ways back, and they were saying, because Florida here, during the Ice Age, Florida was a bigger landmass. It was a huge landmass made up of not swamp, but savanna grasslands. And the animals, mastodons to, camels and jaguars and saber-toothed tigers lived in here.
Yep.
The water rose. So, you're figuring about 200 miles out from the coast. So we don't even know what kind of Indians may have lived out here that, moved inland and changed who they were, and different type of living. But we're just going to go with the ones that they found and what we're going to be talking about tonight is these two Indian tribes that basically are extinct. And that's a big thing, because they literally went extinct, to be no more. And that's the Calusa and the Tobaga. I guess that's it. Tobaga. I've been trying to say it all day, but I can't figure it out. Sounds like tobacco. Tobaga. Anyway, they lived on the coast, the Gulf side, as you can see by this map. The Calusa were over here. They took up a big chunk, and Tobaga, they had this nice little inland coast right here, and I don't even know what towns are close by there, but they had some of the best area, really. Let's see, and I got another picture here. This one's probably better. And if you look here, the Tobaga, they took up this big chunk here, and the Calusa had the other half. Now, most of this, you know some of these other names, like the Appalachia. These other tribes I don't know, Timucua, the Isa, the Jenga. Most of these tribes went extinct. The Spanish came over. It was a sad and sorry day when the Spanish got here. They took these people over, and but we're going to talk a lot about the Calusa, because the Calusa survived the longest out of all of these tribes. They survived longer than any of them, and the only reason that they were destroyed mainly was because of famine and disease. The Spanish came in, and they were a very fierce tribe. They fought back. They went toe to toe with the Spanish, and then when the disease came through and wiped out their tribes, that's when the Spanish went in and literally tried to convert them to Christianity, which they didn't really want to have any part of, and then still tried to wipe them out. And eventually they succeeded, but until 1760, some of the last tribes were there. They were mainly if you can see, they came in. They were a plain tribe. They did paint their bodies. They didn't wear much for piercings, unlike a lot of tribes. They in some of these pictures I found, it shows them wearing a lot of clothes, but I think I don't know if these are true pictures, because they said they didn't have many piercings and they didn't wear much for clothes. They literally wore, the men wore a thong, and the women wore almost less than that. So, we got that. This is more a depictable picture of what they might have looked like. And this here was probably the closest I could find. They did like to paint their bodies, but even this guy here has got piercings on his ears. You see the rings in his ears. They wore a lot of shell jewelry. They used spears and dug shells and did a lot of fishing. And they wore their hair long, at least from all the stuff I read. They would have, Florida had quite the number of tribes, and it's hard to keep track of which tribe was which, because they all died out, and now, we're just trying to dig up the remains. And as you know, in Florida, and nothing survives very long because of the heat, the bugs. They didn't use a lot of stones, because there's not a lot of stones. It's sandy soil. So, they're making stuff out of palm leaves and tree branches and shells. But luckily, we do have the shells. And they did create these big houses. And they made mounds, and they've made big, giant cathedral buildings, said to be able to hold 2,000 people comfortably. And they say these were on mounds, and they had, what they were for, we don't really know. But I imagine it's because it rains in Florida a lot. And if you were going to hold a tribal dance, or if you were going to do anything, so forth and so on, you would probably want to be out of the sun and out of the rain and not have to worry about the weather. Hey, it's pouring rain. Let's do our tribal dance now, right?
And out of the swamp.
Out of the swamp, yes. In case there's
There
flooding.
are many places down in the Everglades that, for those folks who know where they are, and even down on the Myakka River and places down around Sarasota, between Sarasota and Tampa, then the Myakka River and south of Sarasota and all that. Back in there are still some mounds. Some of them are larger than others, but if you lived in a swamp, you wanted to be above, the swamp level. That that was a big reason for making a mound.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you wouldn't want to have your ritual and then have it get it all flooded out and say, yeah, we all got to stand in the mud today. Having it on a mound is probably a sacred thing at that point. These people were called the shellfish people. And there's pictures showing that they were worshiping a shellfish, but I don't believe that they would have they're probably smarter than to put a shell on a circle and then bow and pray to it. I just don't see that, unless this is a burial mound. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, they make these people out, no matter what I ever read, they make them out to be idiots. They make them out to be, nothing more than just drag your knuckles on the ground cavemen. They didn't know how to do anything. They couldn't do anything, but they did. They had, quite the community. They, had boats and did shellfish and a lot of fishing. And that's what they did. They didn't really have a lot of enemies. There is really no boats because, they're all rotted away. They've only, I think in all of Florida, they only found one of these dugout canoes. But I can imagine that's probably what they used. But they were known for taking the shells. They would eat the shellfish and throw the shellfish right outside their door. That's what they're known for. And as you can see from their diggings, here's the piles of shellfish feet deep. Look at that. Feet deep, right outside of where they would have had a house or a hut. So they ate a lot of shellfish. They all, and you can see in this picture, here's their hut, and then layer after layer and after layer of shellfish. And I suppose this was their, in my mind, what I'm thinking is this was their answer to gravel.
Yeah.
Here, just throw it out the door, and now when we walk, we're not walking in mud.
Yep. Back in the day, the street that I lived on growing up in Tampa,
yeah,
the road was it was a sandy road covered with shell, and it was oyster shells. And they packed the road with oyster shells, and then they get this. They would go over the top of the oyster shells. They would put oil. I mean, flat out, just 30 weight motor oil, and spray it on the ground, on the road. Wow. And that was our street, for a long time. And way back in in the 60s and 50s and 60s, and even into the 70s, early 70s, till they started outlawing putting motor oil on the ground like that. Yeah. That's the way it was back in the day. But they still used the shell because it was easy to compact. and it's made out of limestone. Basically, shells are lime, and so it crushed into a really good spot. And so, after a while, our roadbed got built up as they kept putting shells down. So, but anyway.
Yeah. That's, see, the shells do a lot. They're hard. They're like a rock.
Yep.
And imagine that's how this was. Look at how high of a pile they made, and over and over and over. And you can just see that that's a good way of building your house. Build your hut on top of all the shells. Works. Anyway, what else do we got with these people? They did a lot of fishing. Mostly the things they had, was they would have berries and fish and shellfish. Basically you're living by the ocean. What else you gonna do? Of course, we got the Calusa, the Shell Indians. That's what they're called. The Calusa lived on the sandy shores of the southwest coast of Florida. These Indians controlled most of Florida. The population of this tribe may have reached as many as 50,000 people. And that's a lot of people, but if you got a lot of fish from the ocean to feed them, you could do it. The Calusa men were tall and well built with long hair. Calusa means fierce people, and they were. According to the Spanish, they were anyway. And they were described as fierce, warlike people. Many smaller tribes were consistently watching for these marauding warriors. The first Spanish explorers found these Indians were not very friendly. The explorers soon became targets of the Calusa attacks. This tribe was the first one that the Spanish explorers wrote home about in 1513. How did the Calusa live? Just kind of like we talked about, the Calusa lived on the coast and along the inner waterways. They built their homes on stilts and woven palmetto leaves to fashion roofs. But they did not construct any walls. And why would you need walls when it's warm in Florida almost all the time, right?
Yep.
And you got to remember, the Indians of the north, they were pretty much, living in a teepee out in the middle of a 40 below snowstorm. And these guys are just, if you're outside every day, you don't need all of that like we do nowadays. We're soft. Right?
Having lived in Tampa, my growing up years, if it got to 50 degrees, it was cold.
Yeah, there you go.
So, and that was in the dead of winter, and we would get our cold snaps, but that was in Tampa. But if, for the folks that lived even further south of us, it stays warm most of the year, so there's only maybe 6 weeks out of the year that you might really have a good cold snap come through for a day or so, but otherwise you're right back into the 70s and 80s,
Yeah, nice. The Calusa Indians did not farm like other tribes in Florida. Instead, they fished for their food on the coast, the bays and the rivers and the waterways. The men and boys of the tribe made nets from palm tree webbing to catch mullet, pinfish, pigfish, catfish. They used spears to catch eels and turtles. They made fish bone arrowheads to hunt for animals such as deer. The women and children learned to catch shellfish like crabs, clams, lobsters, and oysters. The Calusa are considered to be the first shell collectors. Shells were discarded in huge heaps, like we watched earlier there. Unlike the other Indian tribes, the Calusa did not make many pottery items. They used shells for tools, utensils, jewelry, ornaments for their shrines. Shells of spears were made for fishing and hunting. Shell mounds can still be found today in many parts of southern Florida. Environmentalists and conservation groups protect many of these remaining shell mounds. One shell mound site in Mount Key or Estro Bay in Lee County its construction is made entirely of shells. Wow, that's a lot of shells. Shells and clay. This site is believed to be the chief town of the Calusa, where the leader of the tribe, Chief Carlos, lived. Archaeologists have excavated many of these mounds to learn more about these extinct people. Artifacts such as Shell tools, weapons, ornaments are on display in many Florida museums. Living and surviving on the coast caused the tribesmen to become great sailors. They defended their land against other smaller tribes, and European explorers were traveling by water. The Calahoochee River, which means River of the Calusa, was their main waterway. And remember, rivers are like great highways. They traveled by dugout canoe, which were made from hollowed out cypress logs approximately 15 feet long. They used these canoes to travel as far as Cuba, believe it or not. Cuba is 90 miles away. Explorers reported that the Calusa attacked their ships that were anchored close to shore. The Calusa were also known to sail up and down the west coast, savaging the wealth from shipwrecks or scavenging. But anyway, so they were good sailors. What happened to these fierce sailing Indians? The Calusa tribe died out in the early 1700s. Enemies of Indian tribes from Georgia and South Carolina began raiding the Calusa territory. Many Calusa were captured and sold as slaves. In addition, diseases such as smallpox, measles were brought into the area from the Spanish and the French explorers, and these diseases wiped out entire villages. It is believed that the few remaining Calusa Indians left for Cuba, and when the Spanish turned Florida over to the British in 1763. And there you go. They didn't really, manage well with the diseases.
No, and what they don't really say, but when you listen, like I have around the fire with, the elders, some of those folks who, they didn't all die.
Yeah.
Some of them made it to other tribes and just were, and it might have only been 5 of them, but they didn't all die. But most of them did. That is true. And as far as the tribe is concerned, the tribe died.
Yes.
Because any people who were left over, moved north, or the north moved south, and they became part of the Creek Nation, or the Muskogee Creek, or the Seminole. They became part of another tribe. But to the point, though, the tribe itself died, absolutely died.
Yeah.
But there were, to the point where, you mean there wasn't nobody left? No, there was a couple of stragglers.
Yep. Oh, yeah, I'm sure that, they didn't.
But it doesn't say that, though.
Yes, it is. Make it clear the tribe died out, but the Indian DNA probably lived on in other tribes. But a lot of these tribes did, thin out because of the disease. Like we were talking about. If you got 50 people in your tribe and all but 2 or 3 die out, you're going to go look for other people. Maybe the tribe next door. Hey, we got nothing. We just want to be together. We'll be your tribe.
Let me add something about the Cuba thing, because I was going to mention it anyway, but since you brought it up, I've got a 17.5-foot canoe, and the guy that I bought it from, I asked him, I said, so tell me a story about this canoe since I'm buying it from you. And he said, well, when I was 72 years old, I paddled from Key West to Cuba and spent my birthday in Cuba.
Wow.
And I was like, come on now, don't lie to me. And he goes, no, really, I spent the night over there and then paddled back the next day. That was my birthday present to myself. And so I have heard from other folks that, if you're a fairly strong paddler, you can make that stretch across Key West to Cuba in no time. And I'm like, okay. So the idea that there are folks who have done it to this day, and people say, no, that can't really be. Yeah, it can. People have done it, and they've been doing it for years, which means that from Cuba to Haiti and to, all of the islands down in there in the Caribbean. So some of those Indians could have come from any one of those islands, from Haiti to Cuba, and then from Cuba to the Keys, and up the Keys to, into Florida. So there was a migration going all directions back in those days.
Yeah,
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
We're going to get into that a little bit about the migration of the natives, because the next tribe talks a little bit more that we're going to talk about tonight.
Leave it up to me to get jump the gun.
Yeah, because it talks a little bit more, and I got some pictures that are going to point out some interesting things about these Indians and the Aztecs and the Mayans from down in Mexico. And you tell me if there's not a pattern here, but we're going to get to that soon. So let's go on here a little bit with these Calusa Indians. We're going to move over to the Tobago. Okay. So anyway, we're talking about them. And this here talks about they've inhabited this place for about 2,000 years ago. First people lived, this is what they estimate. Okay, give them the benefit of the doubt. So they came here 2,000 years ago, but where did they come from? That's what I want to know. Anyway, the mound key, they're talking about making mounds made up of shells, bones, and pottery, etc., etc., etc. They basically discarded the trash in these mounds, which became memorials, whatever. But what it boils down to, in the 16th century, the Spanish encountered, just like I was saying, encountered the Calusa and attempted to convert them to Catholicism. But the Calusa resisted, unlike a lot of Indians, the conversion, and attacked many of the explorers who entered their territory. Unfortunately, the Spanish brought with them diseases that the Calusa were not immune to, and by the 1760s, disease and warfare had wiped out the Calusa people. Okay, so there you go. Through the disease and everything, like I said, they just couldn't handle it. They lived there for hundreds or thousands of years, and basically when all the records that we have of these people is from these early Spanish recordings. Like here, we'll just start at some of this. The rich, relatively stable coastal ecology of Florida provided an abundance of marine life. Well, we know that. As noted in early 1566 account, Pedro Mendez, a Jesuit missionary in early charge of the early unsuccessful attempt to convert the tribe to Christianity, was welcomed by the principal leader, Calcaclus, with a large meal consistently only of mainly kinds of boiled, roasted, and raw fish. So either you get your fish, you want your fish boiled, you want your fish roasted, or you want it raw. Fruits, and you got fruits too. Fruits and roots were gathered, and deer, bear, and raccoon were probably eaten as well. Calusa used wooden dugout canoes. We know that. The Calusa tribe was highly constructed, with individuals living in fixed settlements surrounding a large central town. Description of the principal town of Kalos, probably located near Mound Island, Estro Bay, was first recorded by the Spanish missionaries in 1586. According to these accounts, Calusa had a head chief named Carlos who lived with Kalos and received tribute from surrounding villages. Tribute was offered in the form of prestige goods such as feathers, mats, deerskins, food, metals, and captives recovered from Spanish shipwrecks. So look at that. They're going to capture you as a Spanish guy and give you up as a trophy. The chief had many wives, one principal wife, and others given to him by surrounding villages. His status was reflected by his personal adornments, which included a golden headdress, beaded leg bands, etc. We're going to sit down here. Let's see. Large earthen mounds and ridges accessed by canals are believed to have been associated with the Calusa ritual. The temple mounds, built by what must have been well-organized workforce, measuring up to 30 feet high, were often topped with buildings of wood and thatch, entered only by the elite, according to Mendez. In 1566, the town of Kalos contained a central mound which special masts were kept and where human sacrifices were made. One ritual was witnessed in which a large procession of masked men came down from the mound accompanied by hundreds of singing women. The anonymous account mentions an autumn ceremony in which dancers wore animal masks. Franciscan friar Fray Lopez, the director of the unsuccessful 1697 mission attempt, described the Calus temples as very tall and wide, with a mound in the middle, with a structure on the mound enclosed with reed mats containing benches around the walls. The walls were covered entirely with masks colored red and white and black. So they were known for wearing a lot of masks. 23 wooden masks were recovered here. 9 carved and painted animal heads, which were probably worn as masks and headdresses. And it goes on and on about a lot of that stuff. The conclusion.
Can I bring that? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So at least 3 animal figureheads were found when they were digging up all this stuff. Like I said, they're only going by what the Spanish wrote about them and what, they can dig up. And so it says from European contact until the ultimate demise of their conflict and illness around 1770, the Calusas successfully resisted considerable bloodshed, intermittent efforts by Spanish missionaries to convert them to Christianity. Upon learning that the Spaniards did not intend to provide food, clothing, and other gifts, the Calusa rebelled, tenaciously holding to their own beliefs and practices. It seems clear that while the Spaniards wanted strategic control of the region, the Calusa territory provided them with little economic incentive for serious pursuit, and they and other European explorers more promising regions to the north. Eventually, in the 18th century, slave raids by the English from the north, aided by the Creek Indians, destroyed what was left of the already declining Calusa population. So that tells you what happened to them. And I do have a layout of their village, I think. Maybe that was another one. But let me find something here.
Can I add something while you're looking?
Go ahead.
You read a statement about that they had gold.
Yeah, only the chief had the gold headdress.
Right. But I want to state that the only place that gold could have come from basically would have been from Mexico.
Yes.
Because you could have gotten gold out of North Georgia, but that's a long way to South Florida, where it'd be a whole lot easier for gold to come across from the Yucatan into Cuba and then across to Florida. So I just kind of want to, because there ain't no gold in Florida from one end to the other. Don't care what you do.
Absolutely.
Now, they could have gotten the gold from the Spanish, but they didn't get, if it was local, they got it from, trading with the Inca and so forth in Mexico. And I could very well see that, I could see that real easy with trade being across from the Yucatan over to Cuba. That ain't far to go.
No.
So, could see where the trade would go. The other thing too, it doesn't really mention, they've mentioned berries and things, but they didn't just eat fish and deer. Oh, wait, there's possums and, oh, maybe there's rabbits down there too. Oh, wait, there's birds too. So they didn't eat just fish. The other thing too is that there are a lot of things in the swamp that they would pull up and eat eat bulbs of different types of plants that grow in the swamps. And a lot of them are forgotten these days, but cattails, you can pull up the cattails and you can eat the roots of those. And there are wild potatoes and wild garlics and things like that. And so when you're in a dugout canoe and you're kind of sailing through the swamps, like you've probably seen, down in Louisiana and stuff, they, they're little islands and places and stuff. So they could forage a whole lot easier and cover a lot more ground than you could on foot. So, but this idea that they kept reiterating, well, they only ate this. you can't just eat fish all the time. It just don't work. Swamp cabbage, from the palmetto bush, and there are just a lot of other things. So, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, I totally agree. That's why I said in the beginning, they talk about these people like they're just knuckle draggers, and they're just like cavemen. They're wild savages out there, blah blah blah.
Hey, they didn't call them hunter gatherers.
Well, that's the thing.
And one other thing, I'm looking at the mask. Someone that I met when I went on to all the powwows I met, and I've talked about him before, Kashka LaRue, who was a Tlingit legend keeper. And he was from up in Alaska, in that little section up there from the Tlingit tribe. And he had masks that were very much like the one that's right there. And they were hundreds of years old. And one of them was 1,000 years old. And as a legend keeper, he took them to the powwows where he went. And he was in charge of keeping those masks. And just holding them things, the ceremonial masks, it was just strange just to hold them. But, so to me, it's interesting that they had wooden masks and had so many, when on the other side, literally, diagonally up to the northwest, to where the Tlingit are along the coast up there, they also had a lot of masks.
Yeah.
Opposite side of the country on a different coast, but another Indian tribe had a lot of masks. Just wanted to point that out.
Well, that's the thing. Masks were worn a lot in the Mexico, and the Aztecs wore masks a lot, and feathers, and that's what these people were wearing. They were dressing in with the coats of feathers and masks and dancing in these rituals. And the king, he had this headdress made with gold, but nobody else had gold. And like I said, so we're going to get to this part. This is kind of the layout of these villages. Okay, what does that remind you of? Got a clue? This is how their village is laid out. What does that remind you of? That reminds you of the Aztecs. Did these people come from Mexico, like an off band, and said, we're out of here, and we're going to migrate, and they went north and found some place? I mean, this looks like what, and the Aztecs, the mountain, here's your mound, you're building on top. Of course, you don't have blocks of stones in Florida. So what do? The best you got, shells and sand and mud and clay, and you build your stuff out of wood and tree thatching. You see what I mean? You got the same principle here, but this is what you got to work with. What's in your area? You ain't going to ship stone blocks from Mexico and build a pyramid here, right?
No, and let me tell you, from a person who has shucked a bushel or so of oysters myself, it don't take long for 10 people to eat up a bushel of oysters. And the amount of shells that's left over from that bushel of oysters is mostly the shells, because what's inside them ain't very big. So you get 100 people shucking oysters every day to have something to eat. Yeah, I could see where it wouldn't take a very long time to have a big pile of shells. Just saying.
Exactly. And then what do you do with the shells? Well, you use them for stuff. You use them for, making tools, use them for rituals, use them for knives, and use them for, hatchets and whatever, fishing ornaments, anything you can think of that, because that's what you got the most of. You build mountains out of them, and then you have your rituals on them. But look at the design of the mountain and the things. It reminds me of Mexico, and there's more. So, and here's another one. Look at here, Temple Mount, the Crystal River site. And this is in Florida.
Wait. Say that again. Did you say Crystal River?
Yeah, Crystal River site.
Huh.
in Florida.
That's not too far from me. I didn't know Crystal River had a site.
Yeah, so here we go. We got, this is your mounds and made, and they built wooden buildings on top. So now, you just have the mounds and the layouts left. And all of this, that's why they don't know so much about these people, because, wood and grasses break down fast. But when I look at this, I see Mexico. I see the big mountainous, temples there, only smaller with wood, right? When you draw it all out, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go to this. Oh, maybe not that one. That's a different one.
Well, and when you consider, it's not like, the Gulf of Mexico is pretty big, but if you go from the Yucatan Peninsula across and over to Cuba and up that way, it ain't far. And, if you've got a decent sailing craft, in a day or so, you could make the whole journey. So, it wouldn't be hard to be ferrying people back and forth, if you were trying to establish a settlement. And what we've talked about before is like, where did they all go back in the day when they abandoned the big cities and all? So what if some of these folks, got in their little boats and, and went over to Florida? Because I think I brought this up to you, but they're finding a bunch of incidents in Georgia where the Mayans and they moved right up through Georgia, right up into North Georgia, almost to Tennessee. So it's like, wait a minute. So these folks migrated all the way up there? Yep. So why wouldn't they have migrated over, to that same area? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, when the guy talked about the golden headdress, that he had, I'm thinking some guy took a massive group of people. At one point, he was the chief, and then the golden headdress got passed down to each chief after that. You see what I mean? And just like you said, that's where the gold comes from. And then they brought well, of course, they had to change a lot of things, because now you're living on the coast. So you can't, build and do like you did before. So now you become a fish shell kind of culture, but you're still building your rituals and your mounds just like you did, 1,000 years ago when you came from Mexico, because that part didn't change.
I agree with you. I mean, because, they cut big blocks of limestone, over there to build their stuff, but there is not the same kind of building materials at all readily available in Florida. It just ain't there.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. They have thatch roofs. Look at here's a picture of what one of those mounds would look like. You have this big
what else that looks like?
Huh.
Look at the shape of it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
I mean, the shape of it.
Well, what I'm saying, yeah, you got the giant thing. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but if you look at this one, I don't know. That's their interpretation of what this thing looked like. It could have looked more like this too, but like a big longhouse, but thatched roofs, with covering all the way around. Like I said, if you're going to have, and then they said that you could put 2,000 people in there. You're talking a big structure, and a high mound, and this took a lot of work. And why would you be building something like this? Well, because your great ancestors built something like this, and you're just following in the footsteps, right?
Yeah, but not only that, but going back to the Vikings and all other kind of folks, they built longhouses because of, somebody getting married and somebody doing something, and not just for having big meals for the whole tribe and stuff. So, it was like a big community house. And so a longhouse was important,
Absolutely. But, we know that they were saying that these people lived in houses like this and along the river, and each person, each family had their own little hut. which is common because you have your normal house, but you have that big giant one big mound house or gathering center that just like a church or a temple or a castle would have, where everybody gets together and the chief is there, which would have been this thing. Now these people I'm going to talk about next describe a little bit more of that than the Calusa people. So listen up, here we go. I hope I'm saying the Totobaca people, the Indians, lived in small villages on the northern end of Tampa Bay. So have you ever been to Tampa Bay?
I lived on the northern end of Tampa Bay.
Okay, there you go. They from 900 to 1500. So who lived there before that? And where did these people come from? See, this could have been another one of those tribes that, and as we go through the story, it makes you start thinking that this was another tribe that came from Mexico area. You know what I mean? Each village was situated around a public area that was used as a meeting place. The houses were generally round and built with wooden poles, holding up a roof of palm thatches. The Totobaca people, Indians, built mounds within their villages. A mound is a large pile of earth, shells, and stones. The chief's home and the tribe's temple were each built on a mound. The Totobaca people also built burial mounds outside the main village area as a place for the women are burying the dead. The women of the Baca tribes had a garbage heap called a midden, which was located next to their kitchen. Middens were created by the Tobacas, used of shellfish for food. Another tribe that uses shellfish. The midden consists of a mound of shells that had grown and packed together throughout the years as shells were discarded after every meal. What they ate. Because of the proximity to both the bay and the freshwater streams, the Tobaca fished and gathered shellfish as their primary source of food. They also ate manatees, which they were abundant in the nearby waters. During this time, the Tampa Bay area was rich with animals such as deer, rabbits, armadillo, and squirrels. As a result, the Tobaca became great hunters. They also gathered a variety of berries, nuts, and fruits to supplement their diet. Interestingly, the Tobaca Indians had corn. Listen, corn. Now, this is an unusual find in the Tampa Bay area. It is not clear how they got the corn, but it is speculated that they may have traded with Northern tribe for it.
Duh.
Yeah, like
Duh.
let's see, who else had corn? Who else had corn?
Well, and how did the Indians up in New England get shells that come from Florida?
Well, yeah, but think about it. Who else had corn? The
Aztecs.
The Aztecs, they had corn. So wouldn't it make sense that they brought corn with them? That would make more sense that they brought corn with them, and then they kept planting it throughout the centuries from 900 to 1500. They came with the corn. Maybe the other group Indians brought corn and theirs all died out, so they went, oh well, we ain't gonna do that anymore. Listen to this about the tools. These people were ingenious. The Tobaca people developed many tools for hunting, cooking, and eating. One such tool was the adze. The adze was made of a shell or pointed stone tied to the end of a curved branch. It was used for digging. The Tobaca also constructed a tool by placing a living tree branch through a shell with a hole in it. Over a period of time, the branch would grow into the shell. The branch then would be cut off the tree. This produced a sturdy tool used for digging clams. How ingenious is that? And they call these people knuckle draggers. For hunting, the Tobaca Indians used throwing sticks called an atlatl. It looked and functioned much like a spear. It was used to kill animals for food and clothing. While hunting, the Tobaca would wear deer skins or something, deer heads over themselves to get close enough to the animals to kill them, just like the Plains Indians did. In approximately 1528, Pizarro de Narvaez, a Spanish explorer, arrived in the Tampa Bay area. He and his men found the Tobacco and brought disease and violence to the tribe's peaceful existence. As a result, the Tobacco Indians became extinct within the next 100 years. Archaeological digs in the Safety Harbor area of Florida have uncovered many artifacts or man-made objects from the Tobacco. Items such as plates, pots have been found, indicating the Tobacco Indians were expert potters. So there we go on them. And like I said, it was very interesting that these people, as you can see, they live right about here, and then the others that lived over here.
Can you make that a little bigger? Because I can't see where you're pointing.
Okay, the Tobacco lived right here. This area. Right here, that's Tampa Bay. I don't know why they got this covered up.
Having lived, growed up there and been up, in the Bay and up the Hillsborough River a bunch of times, had not heard of those Indians when I was growing up there.
Well, yeah, they all died out after about 100 years. So by the 1650s, they were all gone. Like I said, they made a big deal about the Calusa people because they hung on so long. Because where's the Europeans going to settle? They're going to settle along the coast. And if that Indian village had made a nice place, well, if you're a European, you're just going to take that place. Look at the nice little inlet they got here. This is probably the greatest thing ever. You're out of the storms. You're right here. You got good land. You're not too far into the marsh. You're not too far north. You know what I mean? So
south of Tampa is nothing but marsh. South of that, where Riverview and everything is, if a high spot would be 4 foot above sea level. Yeah. But now north of Tampa Bay, where I grew up and everything, there's some highland up there. And I was just sitting here thinking, whereabouts would, because, just north of me where I lived, there was some nice pasture land and open places that weren't swamp, but not too far above sea level, but, arable land that you could plant. So I'm like, wow. So that all that area up around Pinellas County and all up in there. And so you mean they planted that? Interesting. So, it's pretty sandy.
Maybe that's why they were still growing corn, because these Calusa people down south of there, they had nothing but marsh. I mean, how are you going to plant corn in the marsh anyway, right?
Yep. I mean, exactly south of Tampa Bay, it's nothing but marsh. So, but north of Tampa Bay, that north end of Tampa Bay there and the little curve, yeah, there's a lot of highland, meaning, where I lived we were 11 feet above sea level.
But that's what I'm saying. You could have had some fields and grown some corn there.
Easily. Yes, easily.
But anything down below this would have been really hard to grow anything.
You can't grow corn. You could not have grown corn.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So if these people had came from, say, Mexico, the Aztecs are migrating, they came up here, this group of people kept growing corn because they actually had an area to grow it. These people gave up growing corn because there was no place to grow the corn. That would
down around Sarasota, it might be high enough, but the land is really sandy and is not conducive for growing corn. But just north of Tampa Bay there, absolutely. The ground is good fertile land back in the day. I absolutely could see where they'd be growing corn. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, but like I said, when I started digging into this, it's like, it sounds like these people migrated, from there to here. And then like they were talking about later on, the Creek people came down and took over their lands. And the Spanish really didn't have any use for these lands in here because there was no gold. It was marshy. I mean, why would you go down here and fight these people to take over their land? And, what are you going to do with it? It's just marsh. Who wants that? They were taking these people for slaves. And then when disease came through, you know as well as I do, you got people live in communal houses, and in hot weather, disease spreads much faster in hot weather than it does in cold weather.
And also skeeters.
Yeah, well, skeeters spread the disease too. So when a disease comes through, it's just, I mean, you may not have smallpox, your neighbor does, but the mosquito flies over there, bites him, comes over, bites you, and you got smallpox too.
Oh,
Right?
let me mention something else. You had said that early on that they had painted they painted their bodies. Well,
Yeah.
let me tell you something. Having, I got a swamp in my own backyard. I've been down in the swamp before, and where with the easiest thing to do to keep the skeeters off was to literally rub yourself with mud.
Yep.
Cover yourself with mud, because them sons of guns would carry you off, and you just literally go down in the creek and just smear yourself over with mud. So
Yeah.
what they might have considered them, not to say that they weren't painted, but what's to say the paint that they wore was some kind of insect repellent.
Yeah.
Oh, those savages! But wait a minute, it's insect repellent. Stop! That's like 612 to us.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. But like it says, that's we take them as, the Spanish would come in and see these people covered in mud and go, how uncouth that is, and oh my gosh, what savages! Look at these guys. You got, like I said, look, you can see the pictures here, what they look like. But if we go back to these guys, if I haven't gotten rid of them, yeah, they're wearing, a little bit of skins and stuff. Here's a good example. They're not wearing much, and they're covered in mud, and maybe mud of different colors to, whatever. You're thinking, oh, they're like cavemen. I mean, you think the Spaniards ripped off all their clothes to stay cool? No, they kept everything on just to be, just who they are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I mean, go to Miami Beach now, and how much are they wearing?
Well, I know we're going backwards. I mean,
it's like, well, I don't see where those, natives got around like that. Look at the natives on Miami Beach now. Some of them, I can't see where some of them let women wear them things, but
yeah,
anyway.
Everything goes back. Well, I mean, look at here. This is what these guys would have been looking like here. Well, why not? Why are you dressing hard up? Because you didn't have clothing anyway. You didn't have cloth. So you're going to have to wear an animal skin, and if you ever wore an animal skin, it's going to make you hot because it doesn't breathe.
Yeah, buddy.
So you're going to walk around like this, with a loincloth and nothing else on, painting your body up and call it good. And I can see why they didn't do many piercings, because when you pierce yourself, what does that lead to? Infection.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about that earlier. And not only that, but if having, like I say, growing up around here and down in Florida, if you're going through the swamps, you got stuff, piercings and things, you're going to get hung on all kinds of bushes and palmetto bushes, and you don't want nothing dangling. And the main reason why they wore a loincloth was so, especially the men, was because you had to run through the bushes. You didn't want to get your stuff tore up. On palmetto bushes and brambles and briars, and because the woods down here is not like it is, from even around here in north, but further south, it's tough to travel. So, you got scratched up all the time, even when you didn't want to, going into the jungle down there.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. A scratch could mean your death.
Absolutely, get infected in a heartbeat.
Yeah, so why would you pierce yourself intentionally, trying to cause your death? I mean, but anyway, so that is.
I think that and it can't be shown, but I think they were more into tattoos.
Yeah, well, could be, yes.
I think that they would, and it just, how can you prove that the natives 500 years ago had tattoos? You have no proof unless you got a body or something, right?
Yeah.
But I think that, because the Aztecs had tattoos as well as other tribes, I think that the adornment, if you will, was more in the form of tattoos.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. Could have been tattoos, probably not the piercings. I mean, you got to be practical about this stuff. Just like the golden headdress. That's the clue to say, yeah, they had the golden headdress because they came from, the Aztecs. That look at, if you just look up their layout. And this is my assumption. I'm not a archaeologist, but in my head, it just says, hey, you're going to keep doing, even after centuries, a similar thing that you did before, passed down, just like the guy wearing the golden headdress. You don't toss it to the side, say, we don't need that no more. No, it's a ritual. It's passed down from, one chief to the next for hundreds of years.
Yeah. And, as a lot of our discussion is, some of this is still speculation on my part, but it is absolutely based on history that I've looked up and from the history around here. And, you go to these little places and you hear the locals and you hear about local traditions, and you hang around some Native Americans and you hear the real story of things, and you go, some of the stuff these architectural people, they're just literally kind of making stuff up. It's a presumption. But now over the last, my 72 years, especially in the last 50 years, there's been a lot of more understanding of there were Aztecs in North Georgia. What?
Yeah.
That would have never been considered, but wait, what? And so how, of course, these folks had a gold crown, because guess where it came from? The Yucatan, so we're making up stuff. No, we're not.
No, because
are we stretching it a little bit? No, because there is proof that they used dugout canoes and went to Cuba and went to
yeah. Well, here's the thing I see is, you said there's gold in Georgia, but yet the Indians in Georgia weren't wearing golden headdresses. So why?
Not that we know of.
Not that we know of, exactly. Okay.
Not that we know of.
So that just points out that they probably didn't get it from there, because the people who did wear the golden headdress were in Mexico.
Right.
So it makes more sense that it was coming up than going down. Because if you get one golden headdress, there must have been more, from the north. That's why else
I would agree with you that it came from the south, meaning it came from the Yucatan over to Florida and up. Yeah. And it wasn't until later that they found out that there was gold in North Georgia. Yeah. So, but the Aztecs had already moved there before they found the gold, before it became a big hit.
Yes, exactly. And the people who used a lot of gold were down in Mexico, Aztec area.
Absolutely.
And the gold, there's a thing to golds. You can find all the gold you want, but if you don't know how to melt the metal and make it into something, and then what good is it? Right?
And metal casting is difficult. I mean, some of the ornate things that they have found, having been a metal worker and so forth over the years and all, to cast those kinds of things, you got to know what you're doing. You just, I'm going to make a bracelet or a thing. Go ahead. Even though you might be able to melt the gold, but how you going to form it and how you going to make that, especially as ornate as some of these things are. So they were absolute craftsmen who put this stuff together.
Yeah.
Absolute.
Well, that's the thing, and we don't see the Indians north of there working with any sort of metal. Maybe some copper up farther, but really not known for their goldsmithing abilities. And so that tells me that these people came from the south, not the north.
Yes.
But besides that, with the corn, it makes sense that they got the corn from the south when they brought it up. Well, the Calusa could have came, and said, we're going to settle down here, but our corn won't grow, and it all died out. So they said, well, we got plenty of fish. We're going to just do that then. There's no place to grow it. But the Debaco said, hey, look, we got all these fertile fields up here, and it's higher ground. We can plant a lot of corn and grow that. Why wouldn't you?
I could see where the corn could come from either direction.
Yeah, but I
can because being on the East Coast and traveling up and down and okay. But so to me, it would depend on what kind of corn.
That
if
is
it
true.
was like Indian corn versus 2-foot corn, you know what I mean? So Indian corn came from the Aztecs, whereas long-eared corn would have come from up north. But just as a, as a reference, the corn could have come from both directions. But I agree with you. It probably came with the Aztecs to Florida.
And it makes sense coming from the south because, if you're that group of people, what would you bring with you if you're moving from Mexico area? You're an Aztec and you're coming up north, right? What are you going to bring? You're going to bring your chief. He's got the golden headdress. You're going to bring food. What are you growing down in Mexico area there? Yes, you're going to bring those items with you. You're going to bring those tools. You're going to bring your knowledge. When you get to where you're going to build a temple or a layout of your village in the same manner that you are accustomed to for your people in that Mexico Aztec area, which their village does kind of remind me of that. It might not be the exact same, but it kind of gives me the feeling with the mounds and the walkways, and they worked with what they had, which was shells and clay and thatched roofs and whatever you had. So just like
when you move further north up into North Florida and South Georgia around me. Now, when you go over to Colamoki, they do have a couple of mounds over there. But basically, though, the folks that lived through here weren't into erecting a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they built longhouses and things, but if somebody said, hey, let's go dig up a bunch of dirt and pile it over there, they'd go, why?
Yeah, a lot of work.
Well, come on, no, we're going to build this big structure. Why? And just why? So they had to bring the religion with them to have the reason why.
Yeah.
You follow me? Because the folks around here is just like, well, the great creator, and they sit around the fire and they smoke some tobacco and offer their prayers, and they saw no need for any kind of structures to, worship their deities. But, the folks down who built those types of things down in Florida, resembling the Aztecs, guess what? They brought the religion with them too. So why would they build something that resembled the Aztec? They had to brought the religion too, and the reason to build it.
Yep.
Which is the religion.
Wow. Yeah. No, I agree. So you can just tell.
To finish that up, and by the way, so it only stayed in that region. It didn't move north. It didn't catch on around Lake City, Apalachicola. There are some mounds and things in the woods, but a lot of those are burial mounds kind of things. But as far as constructing, huge things, no. It stayed down there. It didn't catch on, is my point.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, anyway. Enough of that. We got a story tonight for you all. Don't we? Gotta get on with this. We're gonna run over time yet.
Yeah, and it's sort of a long story too. And I'm sorry I keep interrupting, but having grown up down here and been around in the swamps, if I can speak on that, where I can't speak about Canada.
Well,
But
exactly. But I mean, the from having that firsthand knowledge, you can see, what they could have done and what they couldn't have done and what the land is like. Like you said, I didn't know. So that information that you're giving me is telling me that, hey, half of their land was tillable for crops and the other half wasn't. So, they had some corn that they could grow. The other Calusa people had no land to grow corn.
yeah, for the south of Tampa Bay, you'd had to go way inland, and still it's really swampy and sandy. But
Yep.
like where I lived and grew up, just north of Tampa Bay, and up in that area and towards Hernando and Hernando County and Pasco County, all up in there. Yeah, they still have farms up there and grow things. So it'd be real easy for me. I could see where they'd be growing it. Yeah, no problem. But not south there,
Yeah, absolutely. All
So, but
right.
anyway, what in a little side note, I'm hoping to get my stuff together. It's been too hot and I don't have air conditioning in my truck, but as the weather is cooling down, and I really, I'm in the mood for a road trip. I really want to go to Colamoki Mounds and do a, a whether I do it live stream or not, I don't know, but I will at least like to tape it and go through it and do a thing about it. Also, to you, Robert, I ran into a friend of mine today, and he has a huge collection of all different types of arrowheads and spear points and stuff that have been collected from around here. And it just so happens that I worked with this guy 45 years ago, and he's old like me. And I was asked, you should give him a call and see, and maybe there might be because he knows a lot about the different arrow points and stuff, that it might be a good podcast show for us to have him on maybe one time.
Absolutely. Always looking for that. Love
So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, and if nothing else, that maybe I could go, sit and interview with him and bring the video back to us so we could air it while we were here.
Well, that'd be cool. That would be very cool. Cool. All right. You ready? We got the show on the road here.
Yep, almost. I'm sorry, I yacked too much. All right, this particular story is called The Red Swan. And I'm still reading from the American Indian Fairy Tales, Snowbird, the Water Tiger, and etc. by Margaret Compton from 1907. The Red Swan. Great Chief Red Thunder was traveling with his wife and 3 children to a council of the nations. When they were near the place appointed for the meeting, one of the children saw a beautiful white bird winging its way high in the air. He pointed upwards, clapping his hands with delight, for it was flying swiftly towards the earth, and the sun was shining on its broad back and wings. While the smile was on their faces, the bird suddenly appeared above them, and in a moment struck their mother to the earth, driving her into the ground so that no portion of her body remained. The force of the blow was so great that the bird itself was broken into pieces, and its plumes were scattered far and wide. The Indians assembled at the council rushed forth eagerly to secure them, for a white feather is not easily procured and is highly prized in time of war. Red Thunder stood speechless in his great agony. Then, taking his little ones with him, he fled into the forest, and no man ever saw him again. He built himself a lodge and never passed far from its doorway. When winter shook its white locks and covered the land with snow, Red Thunder fell, shot by an unseen arrow. Thus the three boys were left alone. Even the eldest was not large enough or strong enough to bring home much food, and all that they could do was to set snares for rabbits. The animals were sorry for them and took them in charge. The squirrels dropped nuts at their doorway, and a great brown bear kept guard over them at night. They were too young to remember much of their parents, and they were brave boys who tried their best to learn how to hunt and fish. The eldest soon became skillful, and he taught his brothers. When they were all able to take care of themselves, the eldest wanted to leave them and go to see the world, to find other lodges, and bring home wives for each of them. The younger ones would not hear of this and said that they had gone along so far, well without strangers, and they could still do without them. So they continued to live together, and no more was said about any of them leaving. One day, they wanted new quivers for their arrows. One made his of otter, another chose sheep, and a third took wolfskin. Then they thought it well to make new arrows. They made many, some being of oak, and a few very precious, of the thigh bone of the buck. It took them much longer to fashion the heads of flint and sandstone, but at last all were finished, and they were ready for a grand hunt. They laid wagers with one another as to who should come in first with game, each one agreeing to kill only the animal he was in the habit of taking, and not to meddle with what he knew belonged to his brother. The youngest, named Deep Voice, had not gone far when he met a black bear, which according to the agreement he was not to kill. But the animal was so close to him that he could not refrain from taking aim. The bear fell dead at his feet. His scruples were gone then, so he began skinning it. Soon his eyes troubled him, and he rubbed them with his bloody hands. When, on looking up, everything appeared red. He went to the brook and washed his hands and face, but the same red hue was still on the trees, the ground, and even on the skin of the black bear. He heard a strange noise, and leaving the animal partially skinned, went to see whence it came. By following the sound, he came to the shore of a great lake, where he saw a beautiful swan swimming. Its feathers were not like those of any other swan he had ever seen, for they were brilliant scarlet and glistened in the sun. He drew one of his arrows and fired at it, but the arrow fell short of its mark. He shot again and again until his quiver was empty. Still the swan remained dipping its long neck into the water, seemingly ignorant of the hunter's presence. Then he remembered that 3 magic arrows, which had belonged to his father, were in the wigwam. At any other time, he would not have thought of meddling with them, but he was determined to secure this beautiful bird. He ran quickly to the lodge, dropped the arrows, and fired them. The first went very near the bird, but did not strike it. The second also fell harmless in the water. The third struck the swan in the neck, but she rose immediately and flew towards the setting sun. Deep Voice was disappointed, and knowing that his brothers would be angry about the loss of the arrows, he rushed into the water and secured the first 2, but found that the third had been carried off by the red swan. He thought that as the bird was wounded, it could not fly far. So, placing the magic arrows in his quiver, he ran on to overtake it. Over hills and prairies, through the forest, and out on the plain he went, till at last it grew dark and he lost sight of the swan. On coming out of the forest, he heard voices in the distance, and he knew that people could not be far off. He looked about and saw a large town on the distant hill and heard the watchman, an old owl, call out, "We are visited," to which the people answered with a loud, "Hello!" Deep Voice approached the watchman and told him that he came for no evil purpose, but merely to ask for shelter. The owl said nothing, but led him to the lodge of the chief and told him to enter. Come in, said the chief. "Sit there," he added, as the young man appeared. He was given food to eat, but few questions were asked of him. By and by, the chief, who had been watching him closely, said, "Daughter, take our son-in-law's moccasins, and if they need mending, do it for him." Deep Voice was much astonished to find himself married at such a short notice, but made up his mind to let one of his brothers have her for his wife. She was not good looking, and she proved herself bad-tempered by snatching the moccasins in such a surly manner that Deep Voice ran after her, took them from her, and hung them up by himself. Being very tired, he soon fell asleep. Early next morning, he said to the girl, "Which way did the red swan go?" "Do you think you can catch it?" she said, and turned angrily away. "Yes," he answered. "Foolishness," said the girl. But as he persisted, she went to the door and showed him the direction in which the bird had flown. It was still dark, and as the road was strange to him, he traveled slowly. When daylight came, he started to run, and ran all day as fast as he could. Towards night, he was almost exhausted and was glad to find himself near another village where he might be able to rest. This village also had an owl for a watchman, a large gray bird, who saw him at a distance and called to those in the camp, "Too-woo! We are visited." Deep Voice was shown to the lodge of the chief and treated exactly as on the first night. This time the chief's daughter was beautiful and gentle in her ways. "She shall be for my elder brother," thought the boy, "for he has always been kind to me." He slept soundly all night, and it was nearly dawn when he awoke. But he lost no time, for the chief's daughter was ready to answer his questions at once. She told him the red swan had passed about the middle of the previous afternoon, showed him the exact course it took, and pointed out the shortest road to the prairie. He went slowly until sunrise and then ran as before. He was a swift runner, for he could shoot an arrow and then pass it in its flight so that it would fall behind him. He did this many times on the second day, for it helped him to travel faster. Towards evening, not seeing any town, he went more leisurely, thinking that he would have to travel all night. Soon after dark, he saw a glow of light in the woods and found when he went nearer that it came from a small, low lodge. He went cautiously on and looked in at the doorway. An old man was sitting by the fire. His head was bent forward on his breast. Although Deep Voice had not made the slightest noise, the old man called out, "Come in, my grandson." The boy entered. "Take a seat there," said the old man, pointing to a corner opposite him by the fire. "Now dry your things, for you must be tired, and I will cook supper for you. My kettle of water stands near the fire." Deep Voice had been looking about the fireplace, but had seen no kettle. Now there appeared a small earthen pot filled with water. The old man took one grain of coin and one whortleberry, dropped them into the pot, and set it where it would boil. Deep Voice was hungry and thought to himself that there was small chance of a good supper. When the water boiled, the old man took the kettle off, handed him a dish and a spoon made of the same material as the pot, and told him to help himself. Deep Voice found the soup so good, he helped himself again and again until he had taken all there was. He felt ashamed, but he was still hungry. Before he could speak, the old man said, "Eat, eat, my grandchild, help yourself," and motioned to the pot, which was immediately refilled. Deep Voice again helped himself to all the soup, and again the kettle was filled, and his hunger was satisfied. Then the pot vanished. "My grandchild," said the old man, when Deep Voice had finished, "you have set out on a difficult journey, but you will succeed. Only be determined and be prepared for whatever may happen. Tomorrow you will go on your way until the sun sets, where you will find one of my fellow magicians. He will give you food and shelter and will tell you more that I am permitted to do. Only be firm. On the day beyond tomorrow, you will meet still another who will tell you all you wish to know and how you are to gain your wish." Deep Voice lay down on the buffalo skins, which were white and soft, and slept soundly, for the old man's words made him very happy. The magician prepared his breakfast as he had done the supper, after which the boy went on his way. He found the second magician as he had been told, and was given a supper from a magic kettle and a couch upon white buffalo robes. The second magician did not seem so sure of the young man's success. Many have gone this way before you, said he, and none have ever come back. We shall see, we shall see. This was said to try the courage of Deep Voice. But he remembered what the first magician had told him and was firm in his resolution. After breakfast the next day, he ran forward quickly, for he was anxious to meet the third magician, who should tell him all about the Red Swan. But though he ran all day, he did not get to the third lodge any earlier than he had reached the others. After a supper prepared as on the previous nights, the magician said to him, My grandchild, tomorrow night you will come to the lodge of the Red Swan. She is not a bird, but a beautiful girl, the most beautiful that ever lived. Her father is a magician and rich in wampum. This wampum is of much value, for many of the shells were brought from the Great Salt Lake. But he prizes his daughter for far more than all. The Red Swan loves her father, and all her life is spent in making him comfortable. The old man has met with a misfortune, having lost his cap of wampum, which used to be fastened to his scalp and was never removed day or night. A tribe of Indians who had heard of it one day sent to him, saying that their chief's daughter was very ill and that but one thing would cure her: a sight of this magic cap of wampum. The magician did not suspect the messengers, though he tried to persuade them to bring the maiden to him. They declared that she could not be moved, whereupon the old man tore off his cap, though it gave him much pain to do so, and sent it to the chief. The story was all a pretense, and when they got the cap, they made fun of it and placed it on a pole for the birds to peck at, and the stranger to ridicule. The old man is not strong enough to get the cap back, but he has been told that a young warrior shall come some day and procure it for him. The Red Swan goes forth in the moon of falling leaves to seek for this brave, and she has promised to be the wife of him who is successful. My grandchild, many have followed her and failed, but I think you will be more favored. When you are seated in the lodge of the Red Swan, the magician will ask you many things. Tell him your dreams and what your guardian spirits have done for you. Then he will ask you to recover his cap of wampum and will show you what you are to do to find and punish the wicked possessors of it. Deep Voice was greatly pleased to hear that he might win such a beautiful wife. He leaped and ran gaily through the forest the next day, and the idea that he might fail never entered his mind. Towards evening, he heard deep groans, which he believed came from the lodge of the Red Swan. It was not long before he reached a fine wigwam, and on entering, saw the magician seated in the center, holding his head with both hands and moaning with pain. The old man prepared supper, for no one was allowed to see the Red Swan, or even to know that she was in the wigwam. But Deep Voice saw a curtain dividing the lodge and thought that he heard a rustle of wings. His heart did not fail him, and he answered the old man's questions patiently and truthfully. When he told his dreams, the magician shook his head, saying, "No, that is not the one. That is not it." To each until Deep Voice thought he would not tell him any more. He was not willing, however, to give up the red swan. So at last he remembered a dream, wholly different from the others, which he straightway told. The magician became quite excited before he had finished the story and exclaimed, "That's it! That's it! You will cause me to live. That is what I've been waiting for a young man to say. Will you go and get my cap for me?" "Yes," said Deep Voice. "And on the day beyond tomorrow, when you hear the voice of the Nighthawk, you must put your head out of the door of the lodge. You will see me coming with the cap, which I will fasten on your head before I enter. The magic food that I have eaten has given me the power to change my form. So I shall come as a Nighthawk, and I will give the cry to let you know that I am successful. Have ready your war club, that I may seize it to strike with when I come." Deep Voice had not known, when he began speaking, what he would say. But as the magician looked at him, the words came. In spite of all the tales that he had heard about the young man who had gone before him, and the magician told him many that night, Deep Voice was anxious to begin his task. He rose early and went in the direction pointed out to him. When he saw the cap at a distance, he thought that no one was near it. But as he went nearer, he found that those about it were as the hanging leaves for number. Knowing that he could not pass unharmed through such great a crowd, he changed himself into a hummingbird and flew close enough to the cap to examine it, but did not touch it, for fear that an arrow might be aimed at him. The cap was tied securely to a tall pole, and no bird could unfasten it without his actions being noticed. Deep Voice, therefore, changed himself into the down of a dandelion and lighted on the cap itself. He thrust his silver fingers under and between the cords, untied them, and lifted the cap slowly, for it was a great weight for so small a thing to carry. When the crowd below saw the cap moving and that it was being carried away, they raised a great shout and ran after it. There's the bird. He flew swiftly towards the magician's lodge. They were shooting clouds of arrows as they went. The wind which blew the arrows blew the down out of their reach. So it was soon far enough away from them to be safe for Deep Voice to take the form of a bird. As a nighthawk, he flew swiftly towards the magician's lodge, giving the call he had named as a signal. The old man heard him and looked out. Deep Voice flew close to him and dropped the cap upon his head. Then, changing himself into a man, he seized the war club with which the magician had placed just outside the lodge, and with one powerful blow fastened the cap securely, but knocked the old man senseless. When he recovered, what was the surprise of Deep Voice to see? Not the old magician who had entertained him, but a handsome young warrior who said to him, "Thank you, my friend, for the bravery and kindness by which you have restored my youth and my strength." He urged Deep Voice to remain in his lodge as his guest. They hunted together many days and became fast friends. At last, Deep Voice wished to return to his brothers. The young magician then brought out gifts, buffalo robes and deer skin white as snow, strings and belts of wampum, as much as he could carry, enough to make him a great man in any country. During all his stay, nothing had been said about the Red Swan. This day, as they were smoking their farewell pipe, the young magician said to Deep Voice, "My brother, you know the reward that was to be for him who restored my cap of wampum. I have given you riches that will be all that you will want as long as you live. I now give you the best gift of all." At this, the Red Swan appeared. "Take her," said the magician. "She is my sister. Let her be your wife." So Deep Voice and the Red Swan went home by the way he came, stopping at the lodges of the old magicians to take with them the wives for his brothers. The Red Swan far surpassed them in beauty and loveliness, and her daughters and their daughters have ever been known as the handsomest women of the tribe. The end.
Very good. Very good. That was an interesting one. Very good. I love the voice impersonation there. Oh, yeah, listen to me. That was good.
My old storytelling days.
Right.
I'm just old now in storytelling. In the old days, when I was a young pup. So, yeah, that was an interesting story. And as I read it earlier today, I was remembering that, we read a story that was similar to this, but it's been a year or so back. And it wasn't, I don't think it was as detailed as this one. And I think there was some head chomping that went along. Like they had to kill the person and then went on to the next one, and that one lost its head and had to play a game or something, but it was similar. But anyway, so with that said, one story here, from Margaret Compton, 1907, and the other one was, the Senecas, which were written in a different place and by different people, but had similar stories. So just interesting.
It is. Very much is. It just makes you think. Hey, there we go. Johnny Boy says, beautiful story.
Yeah, and it wasn't too long.
Whoop, whoop. Yay.
Whoop, whoop.
That's right. That's right. See, these stories are, they have some sort of meaning to them. You just got to dig in there and figure it out. There's hidden stuff in there, but it's a good story regardless. I mean, but they're always talking about, most of these stories, they're always talking about magic. Some sort of magic, turning yourself into a bird or turning yourself into a Puff, or having magical friends like the mole or the mouse or the whatever. Flying, look at, he could run faster than he should shoot an arrow and run faster than the arrow could land.
Then he turned himself not into an animal, but into the fuzzy stuff on top of a dandelion.
I know.
That to me, that's the first time I'd ever heard of. We've heard of him being turned into a mole, into an ant, to hummingbirds and dragonflies, but the down of a dandelion. Ooh.
Yeah. So that's the thing, was there magic back in those days? Why does everybody talk about magic back in the day? Regardless if you're European or Indian, they always talk about magic. So the question is did magic really exist? Or does it still exist and we have just been taught that there's no such thing?
Oh, I think magic still exists.
Well, yeah.
And that through different means it's turned evil. And its own magic can only exist on the dark side. And that, there was never any good magic, but there are white witches, black witches, dark witches. There are Wiccans who don't believe in doing any kind of dark magic at all. And they consider all of their magic white magic. But I consider anything that if you were to do a spell that would try to influence another person, that's bad. So if you want a love potion, then spray some love stuff on you and go by the person. If they don't like you and you smell bad, but if you're trying to make a potion to where you will, another lover will see only you, and then you're trying to mess with the forces of nature. You're trying to force something. But if you're just trying to find some perfume to attract the other sex, that's different, Well, but anyway, any magic that has to make somebody else do something they don't want to, or influence them in some way, I don't consider that very good,
Well, magic, I think, is kind of like, anything else. It's an energy force, and then it depends on how the person who uses it, could you use it for bad or good? It's just like, and that's the thing. There is no such thing as evil magic unless you're using magic for evil.
Right. Because one of the things that of the many stories we've, told, or I've read, or however it goes, but, in that how the shaman would go and smoke the enemy, and they would change into a wolf or coyote or some other critter and go to the enemy's camp and see what was going on. And they called that to smoke the enemy, and so whatever it was, sometimes it was a muskrat or a mole or whatever, and they would come back and then tell so in that it was magic. Yep. So it wasn't that the magic did anything bad, but it was the magic of the person who was able to, however they were transmuted, if they actually transmuted. But, you can absolutely make yourself invisible by just blending in with the background and by believing that you're invisible. So, there are things that seem like magic to other people, but it's actually, you're just very canny, like the fox, and you blend in, but that's magic in and of itself. So, but in the old days, that was the magic. The magic was being able to have enough herbs and to pray over somebody and to heal them. That was magic. But this idea of magic coming from the West, from England and all that, a whole different kind of magic. Not that there weren't some shamans who pulled some nasty stuff, but the really nasty stuff came over with the Pilgrims.
Yeah, I agree. So, have you ever seen one of those invisible people?
Shapeshifter? Yes.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. I think they're out.
Well, not so nice. Scared the bejeebers out of me. Just, uh, not necessarily, do you want to see them? It'd be nice if they'd warn you, like, hey, but,
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree. They're out there. Anyway, okay, what do you got for us tonight? I am ready to dig this up.
yep, I'm cheating tonight.
Uh-oh, you don't have them pulled? Oh my gosh.
We only got 2 cards.
2. Boy.
Yeah, last time we had 6.
I know. There's quite a few.
I was like, what? I went through them pretty good, though. I think I got the message across that they were sending us.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got one upside down and one right side up tonight. And so the first card out tonight is Moose.
Ooh, we haven't had Moose on.
Nope. And Moose is self-esteem. Oh, man, I lost my spot. Got to go back. Oops, went past it. Self-esteem. Moose is found in the north of the medicine wheel, as is buffalo. North represents the place of wisdom. Self-esteem is the medicine of wolf, blah, 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 is the medicine of moose because it represents the power of recognizing that wisdom has been used in a situation and that recognition or a pat on the back is deserved. The wisdom woven throughout is that creation constantly brings forth new ideas and which brings further creation. Moose is telling us that joy should be shouted with pride. The wisdom in doing this shouting is that the joy is catching. In a sense, the bellowing is a way for all of us to lighten up and gives ourselves or each other a well done pat on the back. So we can, oh, but this is upside down. If Moose is upside down, you are being reminded that ego can ruin your self of accomplishment. Ooh, look at me. Look at the good job I did. Remember that others have the same potential you have and do not become careless in your appreciation of their gifts. In other words, somebody else does a good job, tell them. And do not become and do not become careless in your appreciation of their gifts. You tell them. Reverse moose implies that in tooting your own horn, you have failed to be interested in others, and have therefore forgotten that everyone teaches everyone else in the same way. If you're talking about yourself too much, you can't listen to others talk. Contrary medicine, moose medicine may be asking you to go quietly for a while, to calm your spirit and allow the strength and wisdom of silence to enter your heart. This is the core of moose medicine, knowing the wisdom of silence, so that when it is proper to speak, you can take pride in your words. That's a really interesting. And our next one is dolphin, number 40, and it's the manna of breathing. And it usually means that we're not breathing correctly. Manna, yep. Dolphin speaks to us the breath of life, the only thing that humans cannot go without for only a few minutes. We can live without water and food for a few days or whatever, but we can't live without breath. Within the breath, we encounter the rhythm of energy that all life emits, even plants breathe. In changing the rate or rhythmic texture of our breath, we can tap into any other life form or creature just by mimicking their breath. This is a very easy way to connect with divine energy coming from the Great Spirit, as well as with our own personal rhythms. Dolphin is the keeper of the sacred breath of life and teaches us how to release emotions through dolphin breath. Dolphin creates rhythm, swimming through the water and breathing before submerging. As dolphin comes above the water again, it blows its breath out. And with that, in a manner resembling the popping of a cork. This is a good exercise to use before entering the silence, is to get rid of your own pent up energy or whatever. Spit it out. Manna is life force. In the Bible, they talk about the manna from heaven. Manna is present in every atom and is the essence of Great Spirit. The essence of Great Spirit, just by breathing. Dolphin teaches us how to use life manna through our breath. It revitalizes each cell and organ and breaks the limits and dimensions of physical reality so that we may enter the dream time. So use your wisdom from the moose, go into the silence and breathe in the manna. As Dolphin continues to use the rhythm, this reality is a new and different place from which you can explore. If Dolphin has appeared in for you today, frothing through the waves, you are able to be a link to some solution for the children of Earth. So we are the solution. This can be a time when you link with the Great Spirit and bring answers to your own questions or to those of others. Break existing barriers and connect to the dream time or great star nation. Know that we are all whole in the eyes of the everlasting Creator. Thank you very much. Breathe in the life force and use the wisdom of the silence. So that didn't take me too long, did it?
No, we're going to be right under 2-hour mark. My God.
Right. So dang, we're good at this.
Wow. I want to say thank you to everybody who showed up tonight. Xavier, thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you. Richard Red, Scotty Boy, Elderberry, Peachy Queen Peachy Queen. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, F Kitty. Happy birthday. And everybody else who's here that I probably missed. Lucky Stone is in the house. EA Quelling, thank you for showing up. Regine Hutchelson, thank you. Thank you to a big shout out to Scott B. And let's see who else we got here. Anyway, we got a lot of people. People were here off the hook. Probably left by now. And Chloe was in the house. And Big Justin. Anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. And I hope.
Thank you, dear friends.
And we will be back next week for 143. And are you going to have a show tonight?
Yeah, for a bit.
Good deal. So go over there, check David out. He's got good wisdom. You had one on earlier today, and I seen it, and I didn't get to do it. So I see and watch. I was busy.
Keep your powder dry.
Oh yeah, keep the powder dry. Never know what's going to go on. Anyway, I want to appreciate everybody. Thank you. Remember all the good things in this world. Don't focus on the bad. There's a lot of stuff going on. They want to lead you here and lead you there. Find your inner truth. That's the most important thing. Don't worry about what the outside world says. Worry about what your inside world says. And with that, follow the cards. Moose and dolphin. Very important. Thank you, David, for joining me tonight. And remember, everybody, go out, do the things you need to do, and be that frequency you want to receive, everybody. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.